Moses. And the way that Moses led is not the way that Joshua is going to lead. But both of them are men of God. And they're men chosen of God and prepared for God. He is God's chosen. He is God's anointed. And they need a new view of the fact that here is the man that God has set at our head in order to lead us. And they need a new view of the land. As a result, they must have an attitude adjustment. For 40 years, they have refused to fight. But now, they must fight. For 40 years, they have wandered in the wilderness. But now it's time to cross the river and claim the land that God promised them all that time. They need to see the promised land and not the wilderness. We don't live by looking in the past. When I was a boy in elementary school, I remember reading a story about a bird called the Goonie bird. The Goonie bird was different from all other birds because he flew backwards. He didn't care where he was going as long as he could see where he's been. Now that's a terrible thing. When you do that, what happens? You're always running into something, and maybe yourself. But those who want to live in the past can never claim the future. And this church and you as an individual need to ask God to give you a vision of the future that is before you, what God can do and will do and wants to do in your life. Did you know that God has the very best for you in the future as long as you're seeking His face and walking in His directive will for your life? But when you start to look back, you're always going to be in a mess. Always going to be in a mess. A preacher was having a testimonial service. And as he spoke, he said, "Is there anybody here who has ever known a perfect man?" And nobody moved for a moment, and then one little man raised his hand. And he said, "Sir, you have known a perfect man?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Stand up and tell us who it was." He said, "It was my wife's first husband." It's easy to look back, but it's something else again to be willing to look to the future and face the unknown, but believe that beyond this moment, God is going to be with you there, just like He is here. And just like He delivered back yonder, He'll do it again in your life if you're willing to trust Him and know that our God never fails. Need a new view of their past failures, a new view of their new leader, and a new view of the promised land. And then they need a new vitality. Turn back in Joshua to chapter 1 and verse 9 and see what God says. "Have I not commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage? Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest." Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, "Pass through the host and command the people, saying, Prepare you victuals, for within 3 days you shall pass over this Jordan, to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God giveth you to possess it." There was to be a searching of their heart. There was to be a sanctifying of their lives. Chapter 3, verse 5, he says unto them, "And Joshua said unto the people, Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." And in chapter 5 and verse 7, he says that they were to circumcise all of the males, for they had in that wilderness journey not obeyed God to circumcise the male children. And as a consequence, all of these are living outside of the symbol of the covenant between Israel and God. Now listen, if you want to put that all into one statement, their prayer and the command of God is this: revive us again. We need to be praying for God to do a new work in our life. In order for God to do a new work in our life, we've got to separate ourselves from the world and to God. In order for us to have the experience of God's power in our life, we've got to slough off, to shed those things of the flesh that would keep us from being what God would have us be. And thirdly, we've got to make sure that we are living in the covenant relationship that God has given to all of those who are called children of God. So in order for them to possess the land, to claim it and possess the land, they now have to get back to where they need to be with God. Is there something in your life that's keeping God from sending a revival into your heart? Is there something going on in your mind, in your heart, in your life that God has taken His hand away from you, and there's a hunger, a longing down deep inside of you that says, oh God, I wish it could be like it used to be. I wish I could know your presence. I wish I could know your touch. Then my friend, you need to hear what God is saying to the nation of Israel and to Joshua when He says, seek the Lord and pray for God's anointing and His power, His revival spirit to come again upon your life. There are many of us who allow the devil to rob us of our peace, to rob us of our joy, to take away from us the power of God, simply because we have got some little darling sin or some hurt emotional feeling, or we've got some other thing that we're holding on to. And God said, if you want to get out of the wilderness and get into the land, you've got to come apart and let God have His way in your life. Not only do they need a new vision and a new vitality, or they need a new vision to understand that God says it's not by might and not by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Now Joshua has got them across Jordan. Isn't it wonderful? They've crossed over the river. That's not right, is it? They crossed where the river used to be because God stopped the water from flowing, and they walked across on dry land. And now Joshua sees a man with a sword in his hand. And being the military man that Joshua is, he goes over to him, and I'm sure he's got his hand on the sword by his side, and he is about to say, are you for us or are you for them? Are you listening? Are you for us or are you for our enemies? And that man said, I'm not for you. I am not for your adversaries, but I am come as the captain of the host of God. Now remember, Joshua has been anointed head over Israel. Joshua is now in a position to command the people, and they obey. Joshua has just seen a miracle of God when the waters of the river are stopped from flowing, allowing the people to march across on dry land. Joshua is the man. As a matter of fact, he might have said, I'm the man. What do you mean you are come as the captain? I'm the man. I'm the one who has been selected. I'm the one who has been anointed. Don't you tell me. But what did Joshua do? Joshua said to the man with the sword in his hand, when he told him who he was, he bowed before him and he worshiped him. Now, my brothers and sisters, hear what I'm about to say to you, because it may be the most important thing you'll hear today or I have ever said to you. If you want to know the victory of God, you must submit to the victor. You've got to give up who you are in order for Jesus to be the Lord in your life. Now, Joshua understood a spiritual principle that most Baptists never get. because we want to do it our way.